Secondary dominants or applied dominants. These things are pretty awesome because they make each chord sound more important and satisfying. They can also add interest to an otherwise more simple chord progression because they're altered. And they're a gateway to changing keys or modulation, and to the more complex harmonies found in jazz, classical, and popular styles. Here we're playing the Desperado, which has a ton of secondaries. Now, in order to understand secondary dominants, you're going to need to understand dominants themselves and how they resolve. So primary dominant seventh chords resolve to the tonic, creating a satisfying, authentic cadence. And the resolution is propelled by three things. Leading tone resolution to tonic by step, the seventh resolving down by step and resolving the tritone between scale degree 4 and 7. There's a seventh resolving down and the tritone resolving outward. Finally, by root movement down by a fifth to tonic. Let's hear the whole thing and its satisfying resolution in an authentic cadence from 5/7 to 1. Secondary dominants are altered 5 and 5/7 chords that function as dominants to chords other than the tonic, such as 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These resolution chords are said to be tonicized, or made to be temporary tonics. Secondary dominants borrow the function of the primary dominant, and so they make authentic cadences on other major or minor chords in the key. In the major key, chords 2 through 6. You can see here in the diagram at the right. Think of each chord as its own key. So I might have a secondary dominant that goes to the 2 key, D minor, or the 3 key, or the 4 key. In each of these keys, I find the dominant of that key, and that's my secondary dominant for the chord. The notation and pronunciation of secondary dominants is pretty easy. Secondary dominants are symbolized by the 5 or 5/7 chord, followed by a slash, and the intended resolution chord. If the tonicized chord were 3, you'd write 5/7 of 3, where the slash is said of, and 3 is the chord that it's going to, or the tonicized chord. Lucky for us, the resolution of secondary dominants is just like that of primary dominants. So in this example, we have 6 going to 5/7 of 2, going to 2. The middle chord here is our secondary dominant. Let's listen to what that sounds like. 6, 5/7 of 2, to 2. So we have an altered leading tone, which goes to our tonicized note. That's a D sharp going to E. D sharp, there's our altered tone, resolving to our temporary tonic. The seventh then moves down to the third of the tonicized chord. And this is just like any seventh moving down. The root of the secondary moves up by 4 or down by 5. Same thing as usual, circle progression motion, or the motion of an authentic cadence. Now, even though most secondary dominants resolve to their tonicized chord, there's some other resolutions possible. So you can have a chain of secondary dominants which go to one chord after another that's a 7 chord, or secondary dominants to secondary dominants. You can also have the chords, instead of resolving to their temporary tonic, you can have them resolve to their temporary 6 chord and make sort of like a deceptive cadence, or a secondary deceptive cadence. Those aren't quite as common. So which chords can have secondaries? Tonicized chords must be major or minor, and that's because tonics of any key are always major or minor, and that means no diminished or augmented chords can be tonicized. The resolution chord can't be the 1 chord, since its 5 chord is already the primary dominant. So no keys are you going to have a secondary dominant on the 1 chord. That's already there, the primary dominant. What that means in practical terms is that in major keys, you're only going to have chords 2 through 6, because 7's diminished. In natural minor, you're going to have 3 through 7. Again, 2 is diminished there. In harmonic minor, you have the diminished 2, so you won't have that. And you have the diminished 7, so you won't have that either. So you have chords 3 through 6 in this case. The case of the sixth chord is a bit strange because the sixth chord could actually be a major chord going to the 3, and so sometimes that's not going to even be seen as a secondary dominant, just circle motion that moves from 6 to 3. So how do you find a secondary dominant when you see a passage of music? There's 3 steps that can get you there most of the time. First, you just find an altered chord that's a major or major minor 7 chord. In this case, there's an F7 chord you can see here, and there's an A natural in there. You wouldn't normally find A natural in the A flat key signature. Next, you're going to go down a perfect fifth from the root of the tonicized chord. In this case, it's down to B flat from this F chord. If the chord's a diatonic major or minor chord, you found a secondary dominant. Nice. Down perfect fifth from F is a diatonic B flat minor chord, and that's what we found here in this 2 chord. Let's listen to what that sounds like. Here's the secondary dominant. Let's listen to that passage again, starting just at the 1/6 chord in measure 2. Secondary dominant now, and resolution. Creating secondary dominants is also pretty easy. Just pick a chord that you want to add extra emphasis to, or the chord that's going to be tonicized. In this case, I'm picking a D minor chord in the key of C. So C is my tonic, D minor is my 2 chord. Then I'm going to go the 5th of that chord, or just up a 5th. That's going to be where my secondary dominant is built. Next, on the 5th of that chord, build a major or major minor 7 chord. In this case, I did A, C sharp, E, or a major A chord. That A, C sharp, E chord is going to resolve then to my tonicized chord in part 1 there. It's going to resolve to my D, F, A chord. You can do this to any of the chords in the key that are major or minor. So again, in the case of the major key, you could do it to a 3 chord, 4 chord, 5 chord, or 6 chord as well. Something you missed from the video? If you'd like to actually see this presentation again as a PDF, you can just open your phone's camera and aim it at the QR code on the right. It'll go to Dropbox where you can download the PDF of this presentation. If something doesn't work for like that, you can also use a desktop computer and just type in this URL, thetinyurl.com/y588npme.